I was 33 when I realized my life had quietly settled into a rhythm I hadn't chosen. My name is Clara Weston, and I lived in a small town on the edge of Lake Michigan, a place where every day looked almost exactly like the one before it. I worked as a guidance counselor at a local middle school, helping kids navigate their feelings, their friendships, their fears. It was meaningful work, at least in theory. But somewhere along the way, I had started feeling like a spectator in my own life. I'd been married for 9 years to Ethan, a man who was steady and dependable, the kind of husband everyone said was a good one. He worked from home, managing IT systems for a small software company. He was polite, kind, and always on time. He remembered anniversaries, paid the bills, and never raised his voice. But what no one saw, not even us, for a long time, was how still our love had become. There weren't fights or broken promises. No slammed doors, no betrayals, just silence that stretched longer each year, like a soft fog filling every room. We still had dinner together, still asked about each other's day, still sat side by side on the couch watching the same shows we'd watched for years. But beneath that quiet routine, something vital had faded. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt truly seen by him, or by anyone. Ethan noticed, I think. But instead of talking about it, he seemed to accept it as the natural course of marriage, as if all relationships eventually level out into companionship without passion. I told myself he was probably right. I told myself this was normal. Until one evening, he said something that broke through the dullness like a crack in glass. It was a Wednesday early spring. I had just finished folding laundry and sat down beside him on the couch. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. His hands were clasped tightly together, his eyes fixed on nothing. "Clara," he said quietly, almost as if testing the weight of my name. I looked at him. "What is it?" He hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking. About us." There was something in his tone that made my chest tighten. He went on, "I know things haven't felt right for a long time. You don't smile the way you used to. I don't feel close to you anymore. And I think I've been pretending not to notice because I don't know how to fix it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The honesty of his words startled me more than their meaning. He was right, painfully right. "I don't know how to fix it either," I admitted, my voice shaking. He took a deep breath, then looked at me with a kind of nervous determination. "I want to try something," he said. "Try what?" "It's a little unconventional," he said carefully. "I read about it in a forum, how some couples reconnect by trying new kinds of experiences. Not romantic necessarily, but emotional. Structured conversations, guided exercises, even meeting people who help them see themselves differently." I frowned, unsure where he was going with this. "Are you saying therapy?" I asked. "Not exactly," he replied. "Something different. Something that might help us break out of this numbness. I want to understand what you're missing, what you need. Really need." I stared at him, half confused, half defensive. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I've spoken to someone. His name's Julian. He's a facilitator, not a therapist, but someone who helps couples rebuild emotional intimacy. I thought, maybe you could meet him, just once. I'd be there the whole time. It's about opening communication, not crossing boundaries." At first, I thought he'd lost his mind. The idea felt absurd, invasive, even a little humiliating. But beneath the shock, there was something else. A flicker of curiosity I didn't want to admit. Maybe because a part of me knew he was right. Something had gone silent inside me long before our marriage started to fade. A week passed before I decided. Or maybe the decision made itself. I told myself I was doing it for closure, for understanding, for him. But deep down, I think I was doing it for me. The meeting took place on a quiet Friday evening. We rented a small Airbnb on the outskirts of town, a cabin surrounded by birch trees, with dim golden light spilling from the lamps. When we arrived, Julian greeted us at the door. He was tall, maybe late 30s, with gentle eyes and a voice that carried calm in every syllable. He didn't ask invasive questions. He didn't pry. He simply invited us to sit, to talk, to breathe. Ethan sat in the corner, his posture stiff, his fingers gripping a glass of water. I felt like I was stepping into an experiment I hadn't agreed to, yet somehow couldn't back away from. Julian began softly. "Clara," he said, "what do you miss about yourself?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, but the words got tangled somewhere in my chest. I miss feeling alive, I finally said. I used to dream about things. I used to want things. Somewhere along the way, I stopped. He nodded slowly. What made you stop? I don't know, I whispered. Maybe life just got quiet. Maybe I let it. For the first time in years, I spoke without filtering my words. I talked about the girl I used to be. Spontaneous, hopeful, full of color. I talked about how I had shrunk myself to fit into the quiet life we'd built. And to my surprise, Ethan listened. Really listened. At one point, Julian reached across the table and gently took my hand. You're still her, he said. You just stopped believing she had permission to exist. That single gesture, simple, human, undid me. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Ethan saw it happen. He didn't look hurt or jealous. He looked relieved. As if, for the first time, he could see the woman he'd lost long before that night. There was no romance in that moment. No tension, no secrets. Just a quiet, overwhelming truth. When we left, the air outside felt different, cooler, lighter somehow. The car ride home was silent, but not in the way it used to be. It was the kind of silence that feels full of something waiting to bloom. When we got home, Ethan turned to me and said softly, "Thank you for trusting me." I didn't realize how far apart we'd drifted. I wanted to tell him that I hadn't realized it either. That I'd been running on autopilot for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to feel anything deeply. But I just nodded, tears still threatening to fall. Over the next few weeks, something shifted between us. We started talking again, really talking. About things that scared us. About childhood memories we'd never shared. About how lonely it feels to live beside someone and still feel unseen. Slowly, the wall between us began to crumble. We didn't rush into romance. We didn't try to force affection. We simply let ourselves be honest, even when the truth hurt. Months later, we began couples therapy. Not because we were broken, but because we were finally ready to build something honest. Something raw, something real. Julian never became part of our lives again. He wasn't meant to. That night wasn't about him. It was about awakening something inside us. The willingness to stop pretending everything was fine and start being brave enough to face what wasn't. I used to think love was supposed to feel constant, like a steady flame. But I've learned it's more like a series of sparks. Unpredictable, sometimes fleeting, always demanding to be tended to. Ethan and I still have quiet days. But now that quiet feels peaceful, not hollow. We reach for each other more often, not because we're supposed to, but because we want to. Sometimes he'll catch me staring out the window, lost in thought, and he'll smile and say, "You're somewhere else again." And I'll smile back. Because I'm not, I'm right here. That night in the cabin didn't fix our marriage. It just reminded us that healing begins with honesty. And that sometimes the most radical act of love isn't holding on. It's finally daring to see one another, as if for the first time.